Democracy in Conversation.
Welcome back to Democracy in Conversation. And today I'm very happy to have with us Jonathan Crone. And Jonathan and I have known each other for, well, at least virtually, for about 10 years at this point. So, but it was a very unique beginning, Jonathan.
It was a very Ottawa beginning, I would think would be a good description. I've lived in Ottawa for over 30 years, raised a family here, worked in Ottawa high tech. I was part of the board of directors of one of the Ottawa music festivals. And as such, I was regularly appearing on CBC in support of that music festival. And lo and behold, one day they call me up and go, we need a typical voter to represent your part of Ottawa. So, you know, you've been really, really great with Alan on air. Do you think you could do that for us? And I go, sure, why not? And the next thing I know, I spend a week on All in a Day on CBC talking to the various candidates for Ottawa West Nepean. And probably the thing that I remember most entertaining was I ended up being remarkably blunt about my feelings about the Liberal Party leader at the time. And I think this is probably something where Anita can have an awful lot of fun with this whole conversation.
Well, what happened, of course, is, I was a candidate. I wasn't elected yet.
Yeah.
And you had to decide as the, unaligned voter who you were going to vote for.
Yeah.
And if I recall, you actually said you would maybe vote Liberal and maybe vote for the Green candidate at the end. But what happened after that, of course, is that I had been doing coffee hours every week. Yeah. I actually started when I ran in 2011.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'd been doing them for a number of years. And you ended up starting to come to my coffee hours.
Indeed.
And these were just sort of weekly conversations with any constituent. At the time, I think I was still doing it at Tim Hortons at the time.
You were still doing them at Tim Hortons, and being a father of three with all of the family schedules, I always found the coffee hours hard to get to at the Timmy's. And then of course you started doing them at Algonquin, which was lovely because there was more space and there was opportunity for more people to chat with you. But then the other thing where you and I had an interesting conversation, I showed up to one of your budget consultations. And I always found that to be a remarkably brave thing on your part, because even before the relative degree of hostility that has developed in some aspects of our democracy, I always thought you were really brave for putting yourself so clearly out there in a situation where anyone could throw any question at you. And I remember showing up for one of those budget consultations and watching the people there that were trying to curry favor for government contracts. And I'm standing there asking questions about funding for science and technology. And after the meeting, you came up to me and you made a comment to the effect of, you're not here hunting for a job. You were serious about what you were asking about. And I went, well, isn't that the point of these? And then you sort of laughed a little bit and I went, oh, well, that's interesting. And I learned something. And it was a really, really useful conversation. And you weren't laughing in a sarcastic manner. I think you were really quite appreciative that someone showed up with specific points to try to solve problems.
That's what I try to do.
Exactly.
And so, the coffee hour actually, believe it or not, the coffee hour started with an idea when I was working in the Global South.
Yeah.
And I was working with women, and the spaces for women to do politics in the Global South tend to be more limited.
Exactly.
And so in parts of Africa, I was working in the Democratic Republic of Congo, what the women would do is they would actually go to the Saturday market. And they would the candidates and also elected women, and they would just set up in the Saturday market, and that would be, people would know they were there. And I thought to myself, wondering about why, it's too bad we don't have a Saturday market. And in fact, I thought we do. We have shopping malls. So my first one was actually at the Tim Hortons at Carlingwood Mall. And it was just a way for anybody who wanted to come to come. And the idea, and it still is the idea, even though it's gone online now, but the idea really has always been, I want to hear the ideas, the experiences. It can be really hard for people to find an entry point into politics. So you get a great idea, government should do this. Who do you call? And that's why I was so pleased when you were bringing real ideas.
Exactly.
And what's great is I think you're one of the ones that's gone to coffee hour the most. 10 years, I think you've been almost consistent coming to, through all the different evolutions of coffee hour. Tell me why you keep coming back.
Well, I grew up in Western Canada. I grew up in Saskatchewan. I grew up in the home of the NDP. And being someone who grew up in Saskatchewan and seeing all of the changes, for better or for worse, that Saskatchewan went through, I also recognize that a tremendous amount of what happened in Saskatchewan happened out of cooperation and idea sharing.
Okay.
And one of the things that I've really, really valued about continuing to come to Coffee Hour is 100% honesty. There are people that attend to Coffee Hour whose ideas I absolutely do not agree with.
Me too.
Right? But the thing is that what is so amazing about what goes on in Coffee Hour, either the in-person ones at the Timmy's or the virtual ones, is we've still managed to preserve the idea that a person who has an idea that you don't agree with, you listen to it, you can discuss it, and not have it turn into a shouting match. And so for me, coming back and forth, there have been times when I've had an idea that I have no idea how to bring forward, and I've been grateful for the fact that you and others listened. But the thing that I have the greatest memory of from Coffee Hour has nothing to do with me. It has actually to do with a young lady that showed up about 2-3 years ago. And she's a university student doing advanced scientific research. And she talked about how, thanks to her participating in Coffee Hour and engaging with you, she and her fellow students have been able to create a proposal that got carried forward to help increase funding for science and technology research. And the fact that that happened as a result of Coffee Hour makes me sit here and wonder, what can we do to get more members of Parliament to understand that something like Coffee Hour is not something to be afraid of? Because your discussion of entry point is a problem that every single Canadian and every single riding across the entire country faces. So that's something that I very much worry about.
And you told me once, because I've been trying, I think I sent out probably 40,000 households multiple times that they can come to a coffee hour. You have your member of parliament captive for an entire hour to talk about any topic, and I don't set the topic. It comes from whoever shows up, particularly newcomers.
Oh yeah, and having the newcomers come up with new ideas, like a few months ago, we had a newcomer show up that was talking about an education issue, which is normally not a federal thing. But the thing is, with your knowledge and your ability to network, you were able to help that person out with additional points of contact, which still comes back to the idea of, when you're a regular citizen, having access through something like Coffee Hour could make a huge difference. And it'd be lovely if more members of Parliament were willing to give it a try.
And it is the representative role, right? I mean, I often say, that's where I get my ideas from, is from my constituents. But that's the job. And, I think what surprises me sometimes is that we get 30 or 40 people in a riding of,
100,000 plus.
So,
well, it drives me crazy.
You talked to your neighbors once to try to get them to join.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that we should talk about, and it's something that is probably, of all of these Democracy in Conversation, is a message that I would love to have more people pick up and understand, is just because you voted Conservative or voted NDP does not mean that your member of Parliament does not work for you. So my next door neighbor is incredibly, incredibly blue, right? I swear that if you cut him, he probably would bleed blue, right? He's one of those. And he is steadfastly, bloody-mindedly insistent that you would not listen to him. And I said to him, I'll tell you what, you give me a topic that you think is important, and I'll bring it forward and I'll tell you how it goes.
Oh.
And he goes, right? Sort of, think something out of The Simpsons, right? Grumpy man outlaw on lawn.
He might be watching.
It's hard to say. He maybe.
Well, I hope so. That means he's engaging.
Yeah, there's an engagement. But the thing was, the topic was about small nuclear reactors.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yeah,
and the thing is that this is a topic that gets people sensitive. But the problem is that this is a technology that Canadians could be leading in, and we're not. And I surprised the heck out of you during that coffee hour, because having attended to Coffee Hour, I've learned a little bit about how you communicate. You acknowledge when you don't know something, which is amazing, because a lot of politicians are afraid to not be knowledgeable, right? So I showed up and I started talking about the small nuclear reactor technology. And I said to you, did you know that Canadians have the ability to do this, but we just signed a contract with a Japanese and an American outfit for Canadian reactors? Why are we doing this? And there's a textbook example of engagement, and knowledge all within a coffee hour.
And well, what really is amazing to me is that the people that come to coffee hour have incredible experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what topic that we've brought up. There's been somebody who has a lived experience, and often people with differing experiences and differing views.
Yeah.
And I can't but think about during COVID, there was somebody who came who was very skeptical about vaccines and about mandates.
Yeah.
And I was about to sort of jump in,
Yeah.
and then it was another woman who'd come a few times, not said anything, and she just sort of looked. She put up her hand and she said, "I'm a family doctor.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why it's important to get your family vaccinated."
Yeah.
And it wasn't me.
Yeah.
It wasn't the politician.
It was the community.
It was the others, their neighbors.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding now is we're in a world right now where people have stopped hearing each other.
Yeah.
They've stopped listening to each other, especially people who otherwise wouldn't really encounter one another out in the world, and people who have completely different worldviews
Or disagreements.
or different generations.
Yeah,
different,
exactly,
And
exactly.
what I find with coffee hour now is sometimes, and I've even, I sometimes if I join a few minutes late, the discussion has already started, and everybody's,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm just going to sit back and listen.
And honestly, I figure,
they talk.
Talking to the camera for a moment instead of talking to you. Honestly, we've joked in coffee hour when Anita's being late a little bit that maybe what we should just do is have Anita show up with a bag of popcorn. Okay.
But it is about listening.
And just let us go at it. And it is really a conversation, right? I am a middle-aged high-tech engineer from Ottawa, but in the circle of people that make the time to participate, you have young women, you have young men, you have university students, you have high-tech employees, you've got retired people, you've got an incredible range of experience. But the thing is, for every single riding in the country, every single member of parliament has the opportunity to tap into their community, to tap into the same sort of knowledge that exists. And whether a person is a Conservative MP and a Liberal MP or a New Democratic or a Bloc MP, this is your initiative, but the thing is, your initiative here, Anita, is an opportunity to raise the bar for everyone. Because if any other member of parliament listens to this conversation, Anita is not bribing me in any way, shape, or form when I say that conversations like this could make a huge difference to improving how we get things done.
And right? In fact, it was those conversations. It was at the end of each coffee hour, sometimes I just think to myself, I wish Canadians could get a little bit of a sense of the kind of dialogue that actually happens at the coffee hour. And I wish more. By the way, it's coffee hour, but it doesn't always involve coffee.
Yeah, and I do wish I do wish more people in the riding would participate.
One of the reasons that I thought, okay, I'm going to take, in part some of the people who come to coffee hour, but just that idea of the conversation, which is why democracy in conversation. The idea from the coffee hour that we have to listen to each other. We have to have that conversation, even tough conversations, we need to be having conversations with people that we fundamentally disagree with. And it actually helps us not just to maybe find common ground, but it helps us to redefine and think again about our own principles, our own views.
And figure out how to fix things. I mean, a perfect example is that the whole point about conversation is finding ways to have common ground. As a perfect, let me give you a perfect example. But what I found most personally incredibly tough to live through is a couple of years ago, my daughter was going through stage 4 lymphoma, and we could have a huge conversation about the state of medical care and governmental management of medical care, and we could burn literally 2 conversations just about that topic alone. But what was the most amazing for me personally was that I at no point had reached out to Anita's team about what was going on, but I came to a coffee hour having had a frankly really, really bad day with my daughter's cancer care. But I still made the time to go to coffee hour because in some weird corner of my brain, I was going, oh, this stuff still matters. And partway through the session, obviously I was falling apart or wasn't holding on to things quite as well as I keep things wound up. And I I don't know how you tracked it down, but after that particular coffee hour, I'm assuming you probably had your staff help out or something like that. You called me at home. And you basically said, what's going on? You weren't normal. And that's slightly terrifying for a, just a pokey high-tech guy. Holy crap, my member of parliament knows what normal is for me. But you had been enough at coffee hours that you knew the people who participated and how we normally were. And so that conversation and me having to explain about what was going on, you then said, well, why don't you talk about it at coffee hour? And then 2 weeks later, I came into coffee hour. We started talking about the importance of cancer care. We started talking about support for caregivers. So not just the person with the disease, but the people who have to provide the care. And then I believe I understood the sort of the cascade of all of the pieces. That, I think, turned into another situation where you took something from coffee hour and then turned that into governmental policy, because I remember seeing in the next budget a tax credit for caregivers.
Yeah, and you weren't the only one talking about that issue. That was a huge issue for people.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is,
it did actually
it connected, right?
And it's
put a personal face on it. Right?
Yeah, you see somebody going through something, and it really does impact. And what you were going through, and Josephine, and thankfully
remission. She's in remission.
Yeah.
knock on wood.
And she's a remarkable. I mean, I've had the chance since then to have some encounters with her as well. And I mean, you have quite a remarkable family. And this is, I guess, I want to touch a little bit on something you said, which was around this idea of, your member of parliament just called you and actually cared. Yeah. Because we're people. Yeah. We're human. Yeah. Most people who run for office, they do it because they care. Yeah. I may think that the ways in which other party members believe they can make the country better is not the way it's going to make it better. Yeah. But I don't doubt that they care. Yeah. And, sometimes it's strange for me as an MP that when I talk to people that they kind of put you in this other category.
There's that
but there's a lot of
category.
humanity there. And I think if we find that humanity, and one of the reasons I'm starting this podcast is to get those human stories back in. But also why engaging with politicians, elected officials, engaging with the democratic process, going to coffee hour was so important. You went even when your daughter was suffering.
Having a really bad chemo experience.
It's community, but it's also a way of empowering. I've been someone who now, probably not previously, but now has engaged in literally what is a political discussion every week almost for 10 years. Yeah. How do you see democracy? What does democracy mean to you?
Well, for me, what I find most intriguing about it is one of the pieces that we haven't talked about in all of today's conversation is how we bring the next generation in. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Because I have 3 kids, one of whom is autistic, so his ability to engage is not high. But my 2 daughters basically ignored politics until I started participating in coffee hour. But what's very, very interesting is to watch the 2 of them and their engagement with their social circle relative to what their social circle does. Because they've now seen what happens with the advantage of actually talking and listening. Because there have been times when Josephine, my middle daughter, has attended coffee hour.
That's right.
My older daughter is terrified of the idea, but she has listened in. Yeah. Right?
And so she's doing remarkable things herself.
She's doing remarkable things as well. And if I say anything about her, she will beat me up the next time she's in Ottawa. So let's just say she's a smart kid and she's doing well. But the 2 of them listening has turned into them telling friends that this stuff matters. Yeah. And so as a perfect example, in Peterborough and the Kawarthas, there is a reason that there's a Liberal MP and not a Conservative MP, because my daughter and a large number of her university friends started paying attention to the young woman mother who was running for the Liberals in Peterborough and the Kawarthas. Because that particular MP, I am terrified to admit that I forget her name at this moment. Emma. Sorry, Emma. Emma did an amazing job of connecting with a lot of these young students. And so the incentive that you created of listening to engagement, understanding that's just my 2 kids, but my 2 kids talk to others about there are people who listen, and if you communicate remotely intelligently and not just show up and shout, you have an opportunity to help make a difference.
And this is where the peer-to-peer is so important. One of the things that I really believe is that in a world where people are inundated with information, what their neighbor says, what their friend says, these things become even more important. People that you trust who are engaging become kind of influencers, but in a different way. But that person-to-person conversation is so vital in order to keep our democracy alive and active.
And the conversations matter, because what my daughters heard was not me sitting as a dummy listening to the politician spout. What they heard was me asking questions of the politician, and the politician
tough
answering,
questions too,
and the politician asking questions of me and expecting me to offer an intelligent answer.
And others too,
and others participating and not shouting and beating each other up. Right?
Yeah, that's the one rule of coffee hour. You have to be respectful and listen.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and we have had people who have appeared and then left because they didn't quite understand that participation. But as part of coffee hour, understanding that it is possible to disagree with someone, but not be a grump about it.
So, sort of for a final word, what would you say at the crux of, because we talk about coffee hour, but it's more than that. It is about democracy and how it functions well, and how it ought to function. And one of the things I want to do in this podcast is show the ways in which democracy actually works, so that we can encourage people.
But it's also fair to talk about where things break down, right?
True.
But on the way that things work, the funny thing is that there's an American sitcom called Parks and Recreation, which actually has a whole series of things about the importance of running a small government. And the thing is that even though that show makes fun of certain things, there are key things that you see go on in there, and that is that the people that are deeply engaged, they care about other people, right? And there have been days when I know you have heard things in coffee hour, or you're kind of sitting there scratching your head just a little bit.
Or worse, I have actually I've hung up from coffee hour and burst into tears. I mean, there have been days. But at the end of the day, it is so important for me to be there to listen, even when it's really, really hard.
Really hard. Because you ran coffee hours during the trucker stuff going on.
I remember that.
And there was a lot of emotion going on in those, right? But the thing is that we still found a way to talk to one another. So to wrap up the conversation from my side of things, it still comes down to community and listening and finding a way to talk to someone even if you disagree with them. Because I joked about my neighbor being, bleeding blue, right? There are things that I disagree with him about, but the thing is, even though he disagrees with me, he also still listens to me when I throw things, because I will challenge him on a point here or there, but he and I still find a way to have the conversation even though we disagree. And so that's the thing that I would love for everyone to understand. And if I was to go and throw out a comment in here about me advocating for more MPs to do things like this, I would love to hear of 5 or 10 MPs that were brave enough or willing enough to try to do a coffee hour. And one way for them to do it, to invite you to do sort of like an honored guest type thing. Or
sit in. I had an MP sit in.
Yeah, have an MP sit in. And for that matter, invite a couple of coffee hour regulars to help folks sort of stoke the conversation, right? Because, special guest from the crazed world of Ottawa West Nepean, right? Because you know exactly how there's a couple of regulars who have diametrically different opinions.
Very much so,
But we could demonstrate how it's possible to be very, very different opinions, but still have a conversation and raise the bar so everyone learns.
And actually, that's something that needs to be done across the board. People learning how to have those conversations in a way that is constructive and to really hear each other. And that is
a good way to wrap it up.
Exactly what we're doing here. This is democracy in conversation.
Thank you.
Thank